Good morning, friends. Welcome back to another episode of GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm the GM Philosopher. Today we're talking about the core skills that every GM needs, and this is going to be part number 3 of my Deeper GM Craft lecture series. Now, if you want to see episodes 1 and 2 before we dive into this, you can find links to those down in the description. But for now, let's dive into the content. My friends, I am so happy to see you back for another video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're having a great morning. This lecture series has been a lot of fun. This is only part 3 of 25-part lecture series that I have planned to cover the deeper aspects of game craft, game master craft. And today we're talking about 6 of the core skills every GM needs. Now, the deeper I get into learning about GM craft and how to be a good GM, the more I realize that these are the 6 skills that really set you apart from being, a novice. These 6 skills are going to help you to run games that are not only more fun for you, but also more fun for your players. And that is the goal here at GM Philosophy. It is to empower game masters to run games that are more fun for themselves and for their players. And that's what we do here. We're here to serve game masters, to serve you, the awesome game masters who carry this hobby on your shoulders with your hard work, with your session prep, with your amazing creative ideas. And every time you run a game of D&D or any other TTRPG, you are leading a team of creators and creating a piece of intellectual art that is temporary but beautiful and memorable and very real through the memories and the feelings it evokes. And so it's a very special thing. It's a very important thing. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, the 6 skills that will empower you to do that even more. So let's start with the very first one. This is emotional intelligence. A great GM understands their players, their emotional cues, and what excites or frustrates them. Emotional intelligence helps you read the room and adjust pacing, tone, and difficulty accordingly, manage conflicts when tensions rise between players, and create emotionally resonant moments by understanding what motivates your players' characters. Now, emotional intelligence is really important, and I want to speak on this for just one more minute. And I want you to drop a comment and let me know if you have ever had a player who was really emotional to some degree about the game. When you have engaged players, this means that there's something about the game that is piquing their curiosity, that's getting to them, that is sparking their inspiration, sparking their attention. And it is in your best interest as a GM to not only see when this is happening, which is a very good thing, but also to hone in on it and figure out why it's happening. And here's why this is important. And this is one of the, I would say, the most important skills that I've learned as a game master. One of the most crucial things that can happen for a player during a game is for them to get emotionally stimulated by the game. We have to just push pause for just a second, and it's really important that you understand what I just said. And I'm going to say it one more time because it's so important. I do not want it to just fall beneath the cracks. One of the most important things that could happen when you're running a game is for one or more of your players to be emotionally stimulated by that game, for them to feel real feelings. Now, in order for them to feel real feelings, there have to be a lot of ingredients. And some of these skills are going to help you to do that. There needs to be immersion. There needs to be a suspension of belief. There needs to be a sort of realism that allows for the belief in the narrative and the realisticness of what's happening. And it also has to matter to the player, right? Now, emotional intelligence helps us to do this because when you pick up on a player really getting emotionally wrapped into a story, wrapped up in a character, wrapped up in what's going on in the story, you see them care. Basically, this just means that they care a lot. Well, identifying that that's happening is the first step. And then figuring out why it's happening so that you can continue down that road with them. This is very important because sometimes this happens by accident, but the GM doesn't pick up on it. And then it just flutters away. And what you have is a player who, for 5 minutes of a game, was really engaged, the way you would want them to be engaged the whole game. But then it goes away. Where did it go? Well, it might have left because whatever was causing the emotional connection ceased to be present. And it's going to be very hard for you to pick up on that without emotional intelligence. And so how do you develop this for yourself? Mostly you just pay really close attention to what's going on. You pay really close attention to your players. Watch their facial expressions. Watch when they get excited. Watch when they seem dejected. Watch how they light up when certain things happen. Watch how they lean forward in their chair. These are little cues that will tell you if they're excited versus if they're just sitting back and they're not excited. And then the more you can get them excited, the better. But also picking up on what is doing that is, this is the key. This is one of the keys to running an amazing game. Speaking of the party doing unexpected things, if your party does unexpected things, you should download my Ultimate Plot Randomizer. This is a free ebook I give away to help you create nearly endless plot arcs on the fly. It has 4 D100 tables, roll and the hook table, the complication table, the climax table, and even on the wild wacky table to come up with plot arcs that your characters would never see coming. You can sign up for this via the link in the description. If you join my email list, you'll get an autoresponder email within about 15 minutes with a download link that you can use to download this. You can print it out, put it with your stuff, and boom, random roll those plot arcs whenever you need them. I use this nearly every time I do anything D&D related because my players are well known for just going way off the beaten path. So hey, grab that, join my mailing list. It's awesome. All right, now let's dive into core GM skill number 2, improvisation and adaptability. I've put these together for a really good reason. Okay, let's talk about this for just a second. No matter how well you prepare, your players will always surprise you. I don't know if you know this yet as a game master. I don't know if you've come across this yet, but you might notice that players tend to like to do whatever they like to do. And it can be a challenge. This can be a big challenge because you might do a lot of session prep. You might think to yourself, I'm prepared for anything. And then the players will go in a completely different direction, leaving you scratching your head wondering, what am I even supposed to do when this happens? What am I even supposed to do? A strong improvisational skill set allows you to think on your feet and adapt when players go off script, maintain the illusion of a living world even when making things up on the fly, and seamlessly blend preparation with spontaneous storytelling. I consider myself a pretty good improviser, and I was not always this way. I had to learn about this as I went along. There were times when I got really, really flustered when players didn't follow the stuff I had planned, basically. And this brings up a really important question. If improvisation and adaptability are some of the crucial GM skills, then how do you develop them? Like, we know that planning a session is a good idea. Doing the prep work, at least preparing some stuff. This is good. Sometimes that stuff could be used no matter what the players decide to do. But sometimes it gets really challenging to use your prepped stuff when players go off script. So this leaves a good question. GM philosopher, how am I supposed to improvise? How am I supposed to be more adaptable in my games? So there are a lot of methods for this, but here's the number one tip that I have when it comes to improvisation, which is go with your first instinct. Go with your gut. Go with the first thing that comes to mind, commit to it, and believe in it. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say that you plan for your player characters to stop at this tavern. It's the only tavern for miles, and they're going to stop. You think to yourself, they're going to want to stop here and get a drink, rest their horses, etc. Maybe even spend the night. And you kind of planned a whole encounter here. But let's say that when you describe that they're coming up on the tavern, they say, okay, whoa, let's go around. And you're like, what? What? And they say, we don't even want to ride past the tavern because we're kind of worried someone might see us and come out and try to mess with us. Like, we really want to get where we're going. So can we look for a side road to go through the woods? And you might be left thinking, what in the world? Like, what in the world? I was planning on them stopping there. And then you might even say something like, now your characters would know. This is like the only tavern for a long ways. And, the thought of that cold ale, the thought of a warm meal, maybe even the thought of warm beds tonight, you would know that this would be kind of your character's last chance at that for another 30 miles down the road. And you say this, of course, thinking to yourself, maybe they'll kind of pick up the hint that I'd like them to go there, which is fine. And you can give them hints, and you can even make it kind of clear to them that you kind of thought they would go there. That doesn't mean they will, and it doesn't mean they have to. It doesn't even mean that you should want them to. Okay, now this is where improvisation comes in. So they say, no, we're going around. Screw that. There's something weird going on with this inn. We don't want to go there. So you go, okay, roll me a survival check to see if you can find a side road. So let's say they roll and make a good survival check, and you say, you do happen to see, along the next little way is that there is a side road that kind of goes off to the west. You see that there's a sign, but it's old, and you can kind of read a little bit. It just says West Road on it. And you think to yourself that if there ever were probably a detour around the tavern, this might be it. Though, keep in mind, this may add an undetermined number of miles to the track. You would know from your survival check. So let's just say that they decide to go down this road. And then you think to yourself, what is going to happen? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about a different encounter. And I want you to think about what is going to happen. And I want you to focus on the very first thing that pops into your mind. The very, very first thing. Let's just say you think cat. Okay? Cat. That's what we're doing. What do you mean, GM Philosopher? Don't worry about it. We don't have to know right now. We just know that there's going to be a cat. So here's what you do. You let them ride down the road for a minute. Maybe you have them roll a couple perception checks. Basically, you're just buying a little bit of time to make yourself a plan. Here's what I'm thinking. My first instinct was the word cat. So it's like, okay, it's going to be about a cat. What is the cat's purpose? What is my first instinct? Hag. It's my first instinct, okay? I think to myself, hag. So I'm thinking this goes into a darker part of the woods. They see a cat somewhere. The cat tries to lure them to its hag master, or its hag mistress, whatever. Its hag owner. So this is like, I'm kind of setting up an impromptu encounter. I never even planned on this, but then I kind of think about this dark forest and this weird little cottage, and she's got these yellow glowing lights from the light, and like windows from the light inside, and outside she's got a big cauldron and it's bubbling up and it smells kind of good but also kind of chemically, and she's got there's a bunch of ravens on the trees above her cottage, and it's just a strange little setup, right? And then the players are basically going to ride up past this. They're going to see the cat, and then they're going to kind of see the lights and the glow of the windows off in the distance a bit. And if they choose to go off the trail, then they might find her. And even if they don't see her, if they continue a little ways, I'm thinking a minion of hers starts to mess with them, and I'm thinking a scarecrow. Like there's a scarecrow on the side of the road and they ride past it. Then they ride a little bit further and there's the same scarecrow on the side of the road, right? So this is just in my mind, complete improvisation. But the reason that I was able to put those things together was because I just went with the very first thing that popped into my mind, the first thing. And sometimes it won't even seem to make sense, the first thing. Or you think to yourself, how could I fit that in there? Doesn't matter. Trust yourself. Trust yourself. This is, I think, the number one rule of improvisation is just jumping in and trusting yourself. With that being said, another thing you can do is you can random roll elements to improvise. And to be honest, I also do this a lot. And I've actually created an ebook that can help you random roll nearly any aspect of adventure creation, period. This is the GM Philosopher's Ultimate Adventure Generator, a massive collection of 163 random roll tables on 310 print-friendly pages. This book contains basically a ton of random tables to help you govern nearly every single aspect of adventure creation. There are random tables for selecting the adventure theme, defining the main quest or objective, choosing the setting or location, identifying the main antagonist, determining key NPCs, generating obstacles and challenges, adding complications or plot twists, selecting important items or MacGuffins, establishing an adventure hook, determining subplots and side quests, and more. Plus, some of these tables are really wild. Check out, for example, Chapter 2, define the main quest or objective. There are random tables for the main quest types, quest urgency, quest stakes, quest beneficiary, quest motivations, quest antagonists, quest complications, objectives, rewards, initiators, obstacles, allies, MacGuffins, endings, themes, limitations, setting specifics, moral choices, opposition forces, communication methods, and then literally a D100 table, plug and play quest lines, and that is all just in Chapter 2. This book is currently for sale on my personal bookstore for just $5.99. Link is in the description. This is how we support the small creators and the infrastructure here at GM Philosophy and the channel, the Discord, everything else. So thank you so much. And I hope that you'll consider grabbing a copy for yourself to make your adventures even better, to roll on some awesome random roll tables, and to support the channel at the same time. So thank you so much for listening to my little spiel. And now let's get back to the video. Next, it's time to talk about Game Master core skill number 3, and that is narrative and scene framing. GMs are cinematographers of the mind. Knowing how to frame scenes makes storytelling engaging and immersive. This skill includes descriptive storytelling, making the world feel alive through sensory details, pacing control, knowing when to zoom in on key moments and when to fast forward, and foreshadowing and payoffs, creating satisfying long term story arcs. Now, we can't have a conversation about narrative, scene framing without having a conversation about, in general, structuring the story. And what I notice is that a lot of GMs struggle with this in the sense that they will try to do too much. They'll try to put too much in too fast. Maybe they think to themselves, man, I need to get this mystery rolling. Or maybe they think to themselves, man, I need to get this, plot arc going, or I really need to get this NPC into the mix, when I have found that one of the best keys to framing scenes and then also pacing correctly is to just kind of step way back. Let player characters do their thing a bit. Now, you're going to be introducing stuff, but my tendency, the negative tendency, has always been to try to fill every little empty space with something, push it in there. Sometimes it's good to let characters sit with empty space. Sometimes it's good to let players talk amongst themselves, role play amongst themselves, and then when they seek things out, you think to yourself, this is the direction we're going. This is the scene. This is where the scene is headed. And that gives you a good lead into where to go with your creativity. This is, I think, the most crucial part of the narrative and scene framing skill. And when it comes to pacing, this is also a great way to control pacing. You let player characters lead the way. You let them set the tone. You let them set the direction. And then you follow along at the pace they're going. Now, sometimes it'll make sense to do like time jumps and things like that. Sometimes just role-playing the nitty-gritty and zooming in too much is like too much. Like, for example, if the players need to travel across town to go to the zoo, okay? And let's just say that in-game, that's like an hour-long journey, but you zoom in and you role play that whole journey, you're going to cover a lot of stuff that maybe doesn't need to be covered. There's going to be a lot of stuff that could happen that maybe isn't essential to the story. And so one thing that I do sometimes is I'll say to characters when these opportunities come up, I'll say, would you guys like to kind of like fast track this, or would you prefer to kind of zoom in and role play it out? And then basically what I'm asking them is there anything in particular you wanted to do, or are you kind of just wanting to get there? If you're just kind of wanting to get there, we can totally fast track that a bit. So you give the players the option to choose that, and then giving them that option at good, key, discernible moments is one of the best ways to establish some pacing and to not be super zoomed in on every single aspect of the story. You can also sometimes zoom out, you can go a little faster, etc. Now, core GM skill number 4 is player management and engagement. A GM isn't just a storyteller, they are also a facilitator. As we talked about in lecture 2, this means balancing spotlight time so all players feel included. This is super crucial. Encouraging engagement from passive or shy players. This is also super crucial. I have had some very shy gamers in my games, amazing role players. However, here's the difference between shy gamers and non-shy gamers. Non-shy gamers will feel free to interject themselves into the mix. Shy gamers will really struggle with that. Making sure to keep an eye on which gamers are shy will help you to encourage them to join. Ask them, you'll say, hey, what would you like to do? And this is so important, because if we don't do this with our amazing shy players, then they're going to get left out. And we do not want to do that. Another thing that I sometimes do is use egg timers to track player turns. And that makes sure that everyone gets equal play time. And this is really important, especially if you have some players who tend to be really good at inserting themselves, which is, I love those kinds of players, but the shy players are not so good at that. And they do need their time too. So that's a tip to kind of, balance that out. Another point about player management is navigating table dynamics to maintain a positive and fun experience. Okay, so what does this mean? Navigating player dynamics to keep it fun. This could mean helping players to manage like emotions, helping to manage player versus player type situations, helping to calm down high energy situations, helping to calm down situations that may be rising between players. this is basically a diplomacy skill. This is basically real life diplomacy. So the better you can get at kind of stepping in and giving that calm, rational kind of sense of like, hey, this is great. We're having a great time. Let's make some checks. You see that there's some stuff going on between the two players. And it's like, so here's what you can do. You could roll like an insight check and you could da-da-da. So you're kind of coming in, you're continuing the game, being that diplomatic voice of reason, reassuring all the players that we're here to have a good time and a fun time, and kind of doing it in a professional manner, right? So this is, I think, one of those important aspects of player management and engagement. Core skill number 5 is rule knowledge and flexible adjudication. Rules are important, but knowing when to bend them for the story is a key GM skill. This includes knowing the rules well enough to run games smoothly, adjudicating disputes fairly while keeping the game moving, and understanding player expectations. Some groups prefer strict rules, others like more free-form approach. Okay, here are my basic overarching 2 cents on this specific core GM skill. So understanding the rules is important. But more important than that is the attitude you approach the rules with. So when I'm gaming, I approach it from basically an idea of the players are playing this game with me, right? We're playing D&D. For example, D&D 2024. We have the rule book. There are rules. There are player classes, player abilities, etc. I'm going to know the rules to a certain point, but I'm not going to be perfect about every rule. The players have a vested interest in wanting to get the most out of their experience, get the most out of the stuff that their characters can do. This means that they're going to want to get to do the things that they should be able to do as per the rules. Now, this doesn't mean that every single rule has to be abided by 100% of the time, completely accurately in every situation, and that can overrule me as a GM. In fact, the players should never even ask me to do this. They can respectfully suggest, hey, do you think that this rule applies in this situation? And then I could be like, yes. Or I could say, no, we're going to do it a little differently. And then they should be like, oh, okay, cool. But I, on the other hand, I should also respect the fact that when rules give players cool, unique advantages, this is an awesome thing that I should maybe lean into. So if a player says to me, hey, Jim, I was wondering if this rule could count here because my player wanted to do this, blah, blah, blah. I look at that, and if I think to myself, wow, would this make it more fun for the player? Then maybe I'll let them do it, right? So I may not know every single rule. I can maybe sometimes be flexible on rules. But at the end of the day, I'm going to care about the players. I'm going to care about the player experience. I also have to care about the core, universe and the consistency of it. So if they try to do things that are just broken, then I may need to homebrew or adjust rules to stop the brokenness, because even though it can be fun for a player to do like a powerful thing, if a player breaks the game, this can actually ruin the game and make it much harder for everyone. And so as a GM, I do have a responsibility there too. So anyway, those are my 2 thoughts on rule knowledge and flexible adjudication. And finally, we come to core GM skill number 6, world building and campaign structuring. Even if you improvise a lot, your world needs consistency and logical depth. This skill includes things like crafting a setting that feels right and lived in, establishing NPCs, factions, and locations that react to player choices, balancing open-ended storytelling with structured narrative arcs. Okay. It is absolutely true that the GM is a world builder. This is one of the primary things that a game master is a world builder. Game master is not only the community leader, he's not only the one who adjudicates the rules, but creating the pixels that fill in around the characters is really crucial to the narrative itself. And your player characters want to tell the story of their characters, and then you, in turn, as the GM, you'll want to fill the world in with these amazing pixels that give them inspiration and that give them things to play off of. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to world building, you can maybe be really creative. Some people really enjoy this. You could also be very basic. Some people start with the world at large. Others like to start just where the players are going to start, and then they kind of flesh it out. Here's what I will say. I think that one really good piece of advice for most game masters is kind of start small, like start where your players are going to start and then factor out from there like a few sessions worth. You don't have to have the entire world mapped out just to start playing the game. You don't have to have the entire world planned. You don't have to have the whole world state planned. In fact, you can build those things out as you go. Some GMs do like to build the whole world state first, and there's nothing wrong with that. But one really good rule of thumb is just to start building what the players are going to see in the first 4 or 5 sessions first, and then that will help you to inform and build out like where should we go from here. And if you're worried about like a world map, like personally I do love to start my campaigns with a world map, but to be really honest, it's not even so true that the players are going to end up getting a world map until much later. World maps in a fantasy setting would be very expensive and labor intensive to create. So giving them just like a sketched basic map of the local area that may or may not even be 100% accurate is really all you need to do at first. So you have some room and some time to build with this, and then just go crazy. Just let yourself be creative. Let yourself build out the kind of world you want. If you want dwarves to be kind of like these evil creatures and you think to yourself, I want vampires in this, and you think there are also dinosaurs in the forest, do it. Like do it. And then just plan out your encounters as such. And remember that when you're world building, the story is about the characters. World building is helping you to set up like the pixels and the canvas for that story, but we never want to make our world state like the star of the show. World state is just where the player characters are telling their story, their adventure. So keep that in mind about world building. It should be kind of in the background. It's best done when the adventure is right in front of the players, get their attention, and they're really interested in it. That's when you know that you've built an immersive world. A lot of GMs kind of overthink the world building part. There's my 2 cents on that. And that is going to be a wrap for this. So thank you so much for coming back for another episode of GM Philosophy in the Morning and for lecture number 3 of my Deeper GM Craft lecture series. I'm here every single day, create videos about the best game in the world, D&D, 6 a.m. CST in the morning, and I'm here generally from Monday to Friday at 1 p.m. for Coffee Break Live. Every once in a while lately, I've had to cancel those because of some scheduling conflicts, but I try to do them every single day, so I'm also there. And with that being said, roll some D100s for me at your next game, and I will see you awesome people on the next one.